So, we're on chapter 3. It's almost 7 in the evening when Fat Panda leaves the Rain Street building on the Tong Road. June in Shanghai is a time of sweltering humidity and frequent downpours. The roads and pavements shine, cars and trucks hiss by a shadow of exhaust, and the heat rises in waves from the wet tarmac. Fat Panda is neither a young man nor a fit one, and his shirt is soon clinging sweatily to his back. But it's been a good day. He and his White Dragon crew have launched a successful spearfishing assault against a Belarusian company named Telachin Aerospace, and have just begun the wholly satisfying business of draining the company's data, stealing passwords and project files, and generally making merry with its most sensitive information. In the 8 years of its existence, the White Dragon crew has hit the best part of 150 military and corporate targets. Initially in the US, more recently in Russia and Belarus. Like most of its victims, Talashin has offered only token resistance. A week ago, a junior employee received an email that purported to come from the company's director of security, inviting him to click on a link for information about a new firewall. In fact, the link contained the Zero-T downloader, a remote access tool designed by Fat Panda, giving his crew the run of Talashin's operational files. Since these relate to classified fighter jet designs, they'll be of particular interest to Fat Panda's superiors in Beijing. For the White Dragon Group are not, as some might have thought them, merely a graciously destructive team of hackers and anarchists. They are an elite cyber warfare unit of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, engaged in targeted attacks on foreign corporations, military intelligence systems, and infrastructure. The anonymous-looking building on the Tong Road has been fitted out with banks of powerful computer servers and high-speed fiber optic lines, all of them cooled by precision air conditioning systems. Fat Panda, the team's leader, is Lieutenant Colonel Zhang Lei, and it was he who chose the crew's title. The Moon White Dragon, according to Chinese symbolism, embodies a ferocious supernatural power. It's an omen of death, a warning. Ignoring the crowds of homegoing workers and the clammy heat, Fat Panda walks unhurriedly through the evening haze of the Pudong district, gazing around him with admiration at the city's trophy skyscrapers. At the soaring glass column of the Shanghai Tower, the silver-blue sliver of the World Financial Center, and the vast, pagoda-like Jinmao Tower. That things are rather less spectacular at street level, where beggars rummage through garbage bins, is not of concern to Fat Panda. He is, in many ways, a clever and even brilliant man. He's certainly a lethal cyber warrior, but success had led Fat Panda to a cardinal strategic error. He has underestimated his enemy. While he and his crew have been rummaging through the intellectual property of foreign corporations, diverting terabytes of secret data to Beijing, world intelligence agencies and private security firms have not been idle. Their analysts have been amassing their own data, identifying internet protocol addresses, reverse engineering the White Dragon crew's malware, and following their actions keystroke by keystroke. The information they have acquired and the identities of Fat Panda and his team have been passed up the line. As yet, no Western or Russian administration has risked confrontation with Beijing by directly accusing the People's Liberation Army of state-sponsored data theft. The diplomatic fallout would be too damaging, but others have been less concerned with such sensitivities. The predations of White Dragon have cost their victims billions of dollars over the years, and a group of individuals, collectively more powerful than any government, has decided that it is time to act. A fortnight ago, at a meeting of the 12, at a private seafront estate near Dartmouth, Massachusetts, Lieutenant Colonel Zhang Lei was the subject of a vote. All of the fish placed in the velvet drawstring bag were red. Villanelle arrived in Shanghai a week ago. Fat Panda proceeds through the crowds and the diesel fumes of Pudong towards the Dongcheng Road ferry terminal. He has been trained in the techniques of counter-surveillance, but it has been some years since he practiced them with any real assiduity. He is on his own turf, and his enemies are continents away, little more than flickering usernames behind transparent passwords. That his actions could have deadly consequences has never seriously occurred to him. Perhaps this is why, as he steps onto the ferry, he takes no notice of the young man in the business suit. just meters behind him, who has tailed him from his office, and who speaks briefly into his phone before vanishing into the hurrying throng of Dongcheng Road. Or perhaps it's just that Lieutenant Colonel Zhang's mind is elsewhere. For this prince of cyberspies has a secret of his own, of which his colleagues know nothing. A secret which, as the ferry noses into the polluted currents of the Huangpu River, charges him with a dark thrill of anticipation. He looks ahead of him, seeing and not seeing the illuminated panorama of the Bund, the kilometer-long waterfront in which stand the landmark edifices of old Shanghai. His gaze traverses the former banks and trading houses without interest. These monuments of colonial power are now luxury hotels, restaurants and clubs, the playground of rich tourists and the financial elite. His own destination lies beyond this gilded facade. As he leaves the ferry at the South Bund terminal, Fat Panda performs a cursory sweep of his surroundings, but once again fails to register the operative reporting his progress. This time a young woman in the uniform of a hotel employee. 15 minutes later, he has left the Bund behind him and is hurrying through the narrow, intersecting alleyways of the old city. The district, teeming with shoppers and tourists, fragrant with moped exhaust and the fatty tang of street food, is a far cry from the monumental splendor of the Bund. The pinched lanes are hung with laundry loops of electrical cable, stalls attended by a squatting woman upheld high with rain-damp produce. Tiny shops behind bamboo pole awnings sell fake antiques and retro-styled girly calendars. As Fat Panda turns a corner, a pimp on a scooter gestures towards a dimly lit interior in which rows of young prostitutes wait and whisper. His pace urgent now, his heart pounding, Fat Panda hurries past these impatients. His destination is a 3-story corner building on Dangfeng Road. At the entrance, he keys in a 4-figure code. The door opens to reveal a middle-aged woman behind a reception desk. Something in the fixity of her smile suggests extensive maxillofacial surgery. "Mr. Loing," she says brightly, consulting her laptop. "Please go right on up." He knows that she knows that Loing is not his name, but in the house on Dangfeng Road, a certain etiquette prevails. The first floor is given over to more or less conventional sexual pleasures. As Fat Panda climbs the stairs, he is afforded a glimpse through a briefly opening door of a pink-lit room and a girl in a baby doll nightie. The second floor is altogether more specialist. Fat Panda is met by an unsmiling young woman dressed in a crisp green and white-skirted uniform. She wears a starched cap pinned to her upswept hair, a surgical mask, and a transparent plastic apron, which rustles as she moves. She smells of some austere disinfectant. A name tag pinned to her chest identifies her as Nurse Wu. "You're late," she says icily. "I'm sorry," Fat Panda whispers. He's already so excited that he's trembling. Frowning Nurse Wu leads him into a room dominated by a gurney, several monitors, and a ventilator. Beneath the ceiling light, an array of scalpels, retractors, and other surgical instruments gleam dimly on aluminum trays. "Remove your clothes and lie down," she orders, indicating a pink hospital gown. The gown barely reaches Fat Panda's fleshy hips, and as he takes his place on the gurney, his genitals exposed, he feels profoundly, thrillingly vulnerable. Beginning with his arms, Nurse Wu begins to fasten a series of canvas and Velcro restraints, pulling the cuffs so tightly around Fat Panda's chest, thighs, and ankles that he's completely immobilized. The final restraint encircles his throat, and with the strap secured, she places a black rubber oxygen mask over his nose and mouth. His breathing is now audible as a shallow, urgent hissing. "You understand that all this is for your own good," says Nurse Wu. "Some of the procedures you require are highly intrusive and may be painful." Fat Panda manages a faint groan from inside the mask. His panicked eyes skid around. For an instant, inches in front of his face, Nurse Wu's plastic apron falls forwards and her gown parts to reveal a plump crotch and a pair of utilitarian, possibly military-issue knickers. "Now," she says, and he hears the snap of latex gloves. "You need a full-blooded flush, so I'm going to have to shave and catheterize you." Fat Panda hears water running, feels the blood temperature warmth as he lathers his pubic area, and begins to scrape away with a surgical razor. Soon, his penis is rearing and twitching like a marionette. Laying down the razor, her eyes thoughtful above the 3-ply surgical mask, Nurse Wu reaches for a pair of locking forceps from the tray. Holding them briefly in front of his face, she clamps the sharp teeth of the forceps onto the base of her scrotum. Fat Panda looks up at her adoringly, tears of pain running down his cheeks. Once again, as if by the sheerest accident, he's permitted a glimpse of Nurse Wu's pillowy pudenda. He hears the clink of metal, feels the forceps lifted, and a moment later feels a furious sensation tearing across his perineum. "Now look at what you made me do," Nurse Wu murmurs exasperatedly, holding up a scalpel with a red-tinged blade. "I'm going to have to stitch that." Tearing open a sterile pack, she takes out a monofilament suture line and sets to work. The first entry of the needle makes Fat Panda gasp, and as Nurse Wu wrenches the surgical knot tight, he shudders with barely containable pleasure. Frowning at this impertinence, Nurse Wu takes a chromium-plated probe from an ice-filled kidney dish and inserts it forcibly into Fat Panda's rectum. His eyes are closed now. He's in the zone, the place where terror and ecstasy meet in a dark, swirling tide. And then, suddenly, soundlessly, Nurse Wu is gone. Fat Panda's eyes drowsily revolve, scanning their limited field of vision, and another, different figure swims into view. Like Nurse Wu, she's dressed in surgical scrubs, cap, face mask, and gloves. But the eyes that are gazing at Fat Panda are not amber brown like Nurse Wu's. They are the icy grey of the Russian midwinter. Fat Panda regards her with hazy surprise. A new practitioner is a departure from the scenario that he hasn't anticipated. "I'm afraid things have got very serious," she tells him in English. "That's why I've been called in." Fat Panda's eyes shine with fearful anticipation. "A guapo surgeon. The clinic have excelled themselves." Villanelle can tell from his expression that he understands what she said. Not that he doubts for a moment that a man who's spent the best part of a decade reading the confidential files of international corporations is fluent in English. From back at her feet, she takes an aluminium cylinder, just 9 inches long. Disconnecting the airflow from the oxygen tank to Fat Panda's rubber mask, she attaches it to the cylinder. Pure carbon monoxide is odorless and tasteless. To the hemoglobin in the human body, it is indistinguishable from oxygen. With its first cold rush of the gas into his nostrils, Fat Panda feels the threads of reality drifting away. 20 seconds later, his breathing ceases. When she is sure that he is dead, Villanelle reconnects the rubber mask to the oxygen. She has no doubt that someone with the specialist skills of Lieutenant Colonel Zhang Lei will receive a very thorough autopsy indeed, and that the true cause of his death will swiftly be revealed, but there is no harm in sowing a few seeds of confusion. Kneeling, she examines the prostrate form of Nurse Wu. When Villanelle clamped a latex-gloved hand over her mouth, punched a hypodermic needle into her neck, and injected a carefully measured dose of atropine, the young Shanghainese woman managed a faint mew of surprise before slumping backwards into Villanelle's arms. Minutes later, she still looks startled, but her breathing is steady. She will be conscious again in half an hour. As an artistic touch, Villanelle slips off Nurse Wu's knickers and places them over Fat Panda's head. Then, taking out a cheap mobile phone she has bought for cash that afternoon, she photographs him from a number of angles, none of them flattering. A final click emails the pictures with a pre-written commentary to half a dozen of China's most influential bloggers and dissidents. This is one story the Beijing establishment is not going to be able to cover up. If there's a house rule common to the world's pleasure houses, it is that the customer who's arriving must not meet the customer who's leaving. In the Dafeng house, a back stair leads to the exit, and it is this that Villanelle now takes, having changed from her surgical uniform. Outside, the streets are humid and still teeming with tourists and strolling families, and no one takes any notice of a young Western woman wearing a baseball cap and carrying a small backpack. When pressed, and in the days and weeks to come there will be hard questions asked in the lanes and alleyways of the old town, one or two observers will recall that woman's cap carried the insignia of the New York Yankees, and that her dark blonde hair was worn in a ponytail. From the slender impressions will be born the rumor that the suspect is an American. Frustratingly for the intelligence services and the police, no one will recall her face. 10 minutes' walk is enough for Villanelle to dispose of the phone, battery, and SIM card in separate restaurant garbage bins. The scrubs, Gloves, mask, and cap, together with the aluminium seal cylinder, sink to the murky bed of the Huangpu River in a string shopping bag weighted with stones. Hours have passed, and Villanelle is lying in a claw-footed bathtub in the 10th floor apartment in the Shanghai's exclusive French concession, meditating upon the murder that she has just committed. The water is scented with the essence of stephanotis. The walls are jade green, silk curtains below in the faint breeze. As always on these occasions, the current of Villanelle's emotions ebbs and flows. There's satisfaction at a job well done, detailed research, imaginative planning, and a clean, silent kill. Could anyone else have taken out Fat Panda with such style, such frictionless ease? In her mind, she replays his last moments. The surprise as their eyes met, then the curious acceptance as he began to drift into the depths. There is a satisfaction, too, in the importance of her role. It's exhilarating to stand at the still center of the turning world and to know yourself an instrument of destiny. It makes up for the savage humiliations of her years as Oksana Vorontsova, to know that she is not cursed, but blessed with a terrible strength. Of all those humiliations, it's her rejection by the French teacher, Anna Ivanova Leonova, that she still feels most keenly. A single woman in her late 20s, Leonova was more than a little awed by her troubled pupil's precocious linguistic gifts, and, ignoring Oksana's rudeness and gracelessness, determined to open her eyes to a world beyond the grey confines of Perm. So there were weekend sessions in Anna's tiny apartment, discussing Colette and Françoise Sagan, and on one memorable occasion, a visit to the Tchaikovsky Theatre to see a performance of the opera Manon Lescaut. Oksana was bemused by the attention. No one had ever expended so much time on her. What Anna Ionova was giving her, she realized, was something selfless, something close to love. Intellectually, Oksana understood such an emotion, but she also knew herself incapable of feeling it. Physical desire, though, was another matter, and she lay awake night after night, tortured by a raw longing for a teacher that she could find no way of expressing beyond a sullen blankness. Not that the teenage Oksana was a novice when it came to sex. She tried both men and women, and found no difficulty in manipulating both. But with Anna, she dreamt of a realm of the senses that lay beyond the beery fumblings of bikers behind the bar Molotov, or the rough tongue of the female security guard at the TSUM department store, who had caught her stealing, marched her to the toilets, and buried her face between Oksana's thighs, as a price of silence. She tried, just once, to take things further with Anna. It was the evening they went to Manon Lescaut. They were sitting in the balcony, in the back row of seats, and towards the end of the opera, Oksana had inclinched her head against the teacher's shoulder. When Anna responded by putting an arm around her, Oksana was so overwhelmed she could hardly breathe. As Puccini's music swirled around them, Oksana reached out a hand and laid it over one of Anna's breasts. Gently but firmly, Anna removed the hand, and equally firmly, a moment later, Oksana replaced it. This was a game she had played many times in her mind. "Stop it," Anna said quietly. "Don't you like me?" Oksana whispered. The teacher sighed. "Oksana, of course I do, but that doesn't mean—" "What?" She parted her lips, her eyes searching for Anna's in the half-dark. "It doesn't mean that." "Then fuck you, and fuck your stupid opera," Oksana hissed, rage rising uncontainably inside her. Standing, she stumbled towards the exit and ran down the staircase to the street. Outside, the city was lit by a sulphurous glow of night, and flurries of snow whirled in the car headlights on Kommunistическая Prospect. It was freezing cold, and Oksana realized that she had left her jacket inside the theatre. She was too furious to care. Why didn't Anna Ionova want her? That culture stuff was all very well, but she needed more from Anna than that. She needed to see desire in her eyes, to see everything that gave her power over Oksana, her gentleness, her patience, her fucking virtue, dissolve into sexual surrender. But Anna resisted this transformation, even though deep down she felt exactly the same way, and Oksana knew this to be true, because she had felt the flutter of the other woman's heart beneath her hand. It was intolerable, unbearable, And there, in the theater doorway, one hand thrust down the front of her jeans, Oksana gasped out her frustration until she sank to her knees on the icy pavement. Anna forgave her for her behavior on the Tchaikovsky theater, but Oksana never quite forgave Anna, and her feelings for the teacher took a morbid, angry cast. When Anna was sexually assaulted, matters reached a head. Taking her father's combat knife, Oksana lured Roman Nikonov into the woods and put things right. Nikonov survived, which wasn't part of her plan, but otherwise things went perfectly. Oksana was never questioned, and if she'd have preferred her victim to die of shock and blood loss, at least she had the satisfaction of knowing that he'd be pissing through a tube for the rest of his life. She'd said as much to Anna Leonova, laying the story at her teacher's feet like a cat bringing home a mutilated bird. With Anna's reaction, Oksana's world collapsed. She'd hoped for gratitude, admiration, profuse thanks. Instead, the teacher had stared at her in icy, horrified silence. Only her knowledge of the conditions that Oksana would face in a women's penitentiary, Anna said, prevented her from contacting the police immediately. She would remain silent, but she never wished to see or speak to Oksana again. The injustice of it and the lacerating sense of loss brought Oksana to the brink of suicide. She considered taking her father's Makarov pistol, going round to Anna's place and shooting herself, showering Anna's flat with her blood and brains. Perhaps she'd have sex with Anna first. A 9mm automatic was a pretty persuasive seduction accessory. In the end, though, Oksana did nothing, and the part of her that had yearned so desperately to make Anna her own simply froze. Lying in the scented water in the Shanghai apartment, Villanelle feels her early elation displaced by an undertow of melancholy. She turns her head towards the window, a sweep of plate glass framing glimmering dusk and the rooftops of the French concession, and bites pensively at her upper lip. In front of the window is a lilac bowl of peonies, the petals soft and enfolding. She knows that she should lie low, that to go out on the prowl for sex tonight of all nights would be reckless. But she also recognizes the hunger inside herself, a hunger whose grip will only tighten. Stepping from the bath, wreathed in steam, she stands naked in front of the plate glass and considers the infinity of possibilities before her. It's after midnight when she walks into the aquarium. The club is in the basement of a former private bank on the North Bund, and entrance is by personal introduction only. Villanelle was told about the aquarium by the wife of a Japanese property developer, whom she met at the Pensilua Spa in Huangpu. A stylish, gossipy woman, Mrs. Nakamura explained to Villanelle that she usually went there on Friday nights. And alone, rather than in the company of my husband, she added with a meaningful sideways glance. Certainly, the name Miki Nakamura is one that Dorman knows. He shows Villanelle through an interior door to a spiraled staircase winding down to a spacious, dim-lit subterranean chamber. The place is crowded, and an animated buzz of conversation overlays the muted pulse of the music. For a moment, Villanelle stands at the foot of the stairs, looking around her. The most striking feature is a floor-to-ceiling wall of glass, perhaps 10 meters long. A moving shadow darkens its luminous blue expanse, and then another, and Villanelle realizes that she is looking into a shark tank. Hammerheads and reef sharks glide past, the underwater lights painting their skins with a satin sheen. Mesmerized, Villanelle makes her way towards the tank. The smell of the club is that of wealth, a heady mix of frangipani blossom, incense, and designer-scented bodies. In the tank, a tiger shark drifts into view and fixes Villanelle with its blank, indifferent gaze. "Dead eyes," says Miki Nakamura, materializing beside her. "I know too many men who look like that." "We all do," says Villanelle, "and women too." Miki smiles. "I'm glad you came," she murmurs, running a finger down Villanelle's black silk quipao dress. "This is Vivian Tom, isn't it? It's lovely." Villanelle mirrors Miki's smile and compliments her on her own outfit. At the same time, she's running a security check, scanning the club for anything or anyone out of place. For the nondescript figure in the shadows, the eyes that look away too quickly, the face that doesn't fit. Her attention is snagged by a willowy figure in a white, halter top and miniskirt. Mickey follows Villanelle's gaze and sighs. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Who let the dogs out? Pretty girl, says Villanelle. Girl? Up to a point. That's Jenny Chu, one of Alice Mao's ladyboys. Who is Alice Mao? She owns this club. In fact, she owns this building. She's one of the richest women in Shanghai, thanks to the sex trade. Obviously, quite a businesswoman. That's one way of putting it. She's certainly not the sort of person you want to get on the wrong side of. But let me get you a drink. The watermelon martinis are fabulous. And fabulously strong, I bet. Relax, sweetie, says Mickey. Have fun. As the other woman joins the crush at the small Art Deco bar, behind which an elegant young person is shaking cocktails, Villanelle allows herself to be swept along by the gesticulating crowd of young Chinese men, all designer dressed to within an inch of their lives. I don't think you have what I want, says a soft voice at her side, but I might have what you want. Villanelle looks into the pretty upturned eyes of Janie Chu. And what's that? Full girlfriend experience? Kissing on the mouth, lots of nice sucking and fucking, then afterwards I cook for you? Perhaps not tonight, I've had a killing day. Jenny leans in so close that Villanelle can smell the jasmine flowers in her hair. I got crabs, she whispers. Villanelle raises an eyebrow. Not silly, in my fridge, not my lady garden. Hairy crabs, very expensive. Mickey approaches with 2 brimming martini glasses and hands one to Villanelle, pointedly ignoring Janie. Someone I want you to meet, she says, taking Villanelle's arm and steering her away. What are hairy crabs? A local delicacy, says Mickey, unlike that little prostitute. She introduces Villanelle to a handsome young Malaysian man in a seersucker suit. This is Howard, she says, clearly anxious for Villanelle's approval. Howard, meet Astrid. They shake hands, and Villanelle summons the details of her cover story. Astrid Fécond, 27 years old, columnist for Bilan 21, a French-language investment newsletter. Like all her legends, this one has been very carefully constructed. Should anyone care to investigate Mademoiselle Fécond online, they'll discover that she's been a contributing editor of Bilan 21 for 2 years and specializes in petrochemical futures. But Howard is too busy lavishing compliments on Mickey to concern himself with such details. Fuchsia, he breathes, standing back to admire her Have Légère cocktail dress. The perfect color for you. Privately, Villanelle thinks the color is a disaster. Against her pale ivory complexion, it makes Mickey look like Howard's mother. But perhaps that's what Howard likes? So, what do you do? Villanelle asks. Are you in the fashion business? Not as such. I have a concept spa in Quintiandi. It's heaven, says Mickey. There's a rock garden and an Evian ice fountain and Buddhist monks to align your chakras and do your hair. Sounds fabulous. I'm sure my chakras are all shot to fuck. Well then, Howard smiles, you must come visit. As soon as she can decently extract herself, Villanelle leaves them alone. Circulating, martini glass in hand, she soon finds herself face to face with the sharks again, and moments later with Janie Shu. Come with me, Jamie says, her features soft in the lunar glow of the tank. Someone want to meet you? Who? Come. Her slim hand takes Villanelle's. In a dim-lit alcove, a woman is sitting alone, scrolling through the messages on her phone. She's Eurasian, and when she looks up to dismiss Janie with a casual sweep of one hand, Villanelle sees that she has the eyes of the palest glass green. Janie's right, says the woman. You are beautiful. Won't you sit down? Villanelle inclines her head in acceptance. From the woman's proprietorial manner, she guesses that this is Elise Mao. So, do you like my club? It's fun. Things could happen here. Trust me, things do. Amusement touches the glass-green eyes. Will you have some tea? One of those martinis is quite enough in my experience. That would be nice. My name is Astrid, by the way. It suits you. Mine, as you know, is Elise. What is your occupation, Astrid? Financial forecasting. I write for an investor's newsletter. Alice Mao frowns. Do you now? Yes. Villanelle holds her gaze. I do. I've met a lot of finance people in my life, Astrid, and none of them is remotely like you. So what am I like? On the basis of your brief acquaintance, I'd say you're rather like me. Villanelle smiles, allowing Elise's cool regard to flood her veins. Something in the other woman's features, the way the taut line of her cheekbone softens into the curve of her chin, stirs her. She knows that such feelings are dangerous, but there are times when the secrecy and the almost feral caution with which she has to conduct her life become unbearable. Elise glances at her phone. She stands, her midnight blue dress rippling with the same underwater gleam as the sharks. Follow me. She leads Villanelle to a door and a lift. The noise and the music die. There is a dizzying ascent, and Villanelle follows Elise into a rooftop apartment as dimly lit as a club. There's a folding gold leaf screen and shadowy contemporary paintings on the walls, but the room is dominated by a dramatic expanse of plate glass window. Far below them is the city, its sprawling glitter made vague by a shroud of smog. The whore of Asia, that's what they used to call Shanghai, and it's still true. This apartment, the club, the building, all paid for by sex. Tea? She indicates a spotlight side table. It's Silver Needle from Fudging Province. I think you'll like it. Villanelle sips the pale infusion. It tastes of fragrant, rain-swept hillsides. I could make you very rich, says Elise. I have clients who would pay a great deal of money for a night with you. Villanelle looks out into the night. She can smell the other woman's scent in her hair. And you, Elise, what would you pay for me? Right here and now. Elise looks at her, her smile unwavering. 50,000 kwai. 100,000, says Villanelle. Elise tilts her head thoughtfully, then steps round to face Villanelle. Green eyes meet grey. For 100,000 kwai, she says, undoing the silk-covered button at Villanelle's collar. I would expect a lot. Villanelle nods and stands there, unmoving, as Elise's fingers move down her guibao dress. She closes her eyes, feels the silk lifted from her shoulders and her underwear removed. Naked, she feels the floor tilt beneath her feet. She tries to speak Elise's name, but it comes out as Anna, and when she tries to whisper, "Fuck me," what she actually says is, "Kill me." 4 days later, Eve Polastri and Simon Mortimer step from the air-conditioned cool of the Pudong Airport arrivals building into the 30-degree heat of the taxi rank. It's midnight. Exhaust-tainted humidity rolls over them like a wave. Eve feels her scalp moisten and her H&M cotton twins let wilt on her shoulders. Standing there in the taxi queue, her suitcase at her side, Eve knows that she's not the sort of woman who gets noticed. Since landing an hour earlier, the only person who's given her a second glance is the Chinese customs officer who checked her passport, perhaps struck by the quiet intensity of her gaze. Both she and Simon look older than their years. Their fellow British Airways travellers, if they've given the matter any thought at all, have assumed that they are a married couple. Simon glances at her affectionately. She reminds him of a starling or a thrush, one of those birds that patrol the lawn with sharp eyes and stabbing beaks. The hunter-killers of the intelligence world, like those of the animal kingdom, often have drab plumage. Eve finds her own appearance mystifying. "Do you think I could be pretty?" she asked her mother shortly before going up to Cambridge to read criminology and forensic psychology. "I think you're very clever," her mother replied. It took her husband Nico, a Polish-born math teacher, to tell Eve that she was beautiful. Your eyes are like the Baltic Sea," he said, drawing a finger down her transparently pale cheek, "the color of petrol." "You're such a bullshitter." "Only when I want sex." "A bullshitter and a pervert." He shrugged. "I didn't marry you for cooking." She misses him already. Flagging down a taxi, a green Volkswagen Santana, Simon gives the driver the address of the hotel. "I didn't know you spoke Mandarin," Eve says. Simon runs a hand over his double-roughened jaw. "I did a year of it at university. If this guy starts a real conversation, I'm stuffed." "So does he know what the Seabird Hotel is?" "I think so." His expression suggested he didn't think much of it. "Let's see. Discreet was how Richard Edwards described it." Even Simon's visit is strictly non-official, so there is no one from the Shanghai M16 station to meet them. Indeed, everything about their status is irregular. Since her recruitment by Edwards to investigate the Cadron killing, an operation run strictly off the books, Eve has not contacted a single one of her former colleagues. Instead, day after day, week after week, she has made her way to the cramped and dingy office of a Gooch Street tube station. There, with the long-suffering Simon, she scrolled through file after classified file, staring at her computer screen until her head pounds and her eyes ache with tiredness, in the search for anything, a whisper, an afterthought, the ghost of a suggestion that might lead her closer to the woman who murdered Victor Kedron. And she's got nowhere. She's identified several high-profile political and criminal killings in which a woman is rumored to have been involved, and a handful, which she's almost certain were carried out by a female shooter. She has watched more times than she can ever remember the CCTV recording from Kedron's London hotel, in which his killer can be seen coming and going. But the images are smeared and indistinct, even when fully enhanced, and the figure's face is never visible. We're not sourcing cyberspace. Eve has followed the real-world lines of inquiry presented by the Kedron case. But every lead, no matter how initially promising, has brought her up against a smoothly impermeable barrier. There's no witness, no forensic evidence, no useful ballistics, no money or paper trail. At a certain point, everything just cuts out. Despite this lack of progress, Eve has a sense of the woman she's hunting. The woman she sometimes calls Chanaya Rosa, Black Rose, after the 7mm Russian hollow point ammunition used to kill Kedron and his bodyguards. Eve thinks that her Black Rose is in her mid-20s, highly intelligent and a loner. She's audacious, cool under pressure, and supremely skilled in compartmentalizing her emotions. In all probability, she's a sociopath, wholly lacking in affect and conscience. She will have few or no friends, and such relationships as she forms will be overwhelmingly manipulative and sexual in nature. Killing, in all probability, will have become necessary to her, with each successful murder further proof of her untouchability. It's less than 24 hours since Richard Edwards walks unannounced into the office over the tube station. "Does anyone ever clean this place?" he inquired, with vague distaste. "Yes, Simon does, and very occasionally me. Sorry if it's not up to Walsall Cross standards. We've ordered some more vacuum cleaner bags." "Well, that's something to look forward to. And in the meantime," he opened the briefcase at his feet and took out 2 well-used passports and a sheaf of flight tickets and schedules. "You're going to China tonight. Someone's taken out the leader of their cyber warfare team in Shanghai, and it's thought that the hit was carried out by a woman." It took him less than 5 minutes to bring her up to speed on the demise of Lieutenant Colonel Sang Lei. "Your brief," he told her, "is to make discreet contact with the MSS, the Chinese Ministry of State Security, and convey my assurances that the murder of Sang was not sponsored, enabled, or executed by us. Furthermore, you are to offer them any assistance they might need in investigating the murder, including sharing our suspicions about a female contract killer." "Do I have a contact at the MSS?" "Yes. His name is Jing Kuang. I knew him in Moscow when he was their head of station there, and he's a good man. Since then, he and I have kept certain backdoor channels open. He knows you're coming." "Isn't he going to wonder why he is dealing with me rather than one of the local station officers, who are presumably already on the case?" "He'll guess there are sensitivities, reasons why you can't go in under official cover." "So, do we make contact with the M16 station at all?" Edward stood, walked to the window, and peered through the grime and the traffic. "For safety's sake, we have to assume that the conspiracy to cover this woman's tracks has global reach. If she's killing people in Shanghai, they'll have people there. Possibly our people. So, you've got to keep clear of them. We can't afford to trust anyone." "How much can I tell the MSS guy?" "Jing Kuang? As far as our hit woman goes, you've got nothing to lose by giving him everything you've got." He drained his coffee and dropped the paper cup into the bin. We need to catch her. He needs to catch her. The door swung open. You know, I'm convinced Gooch Street Station's a portal to hell, said Simon, shrugging his computer bag from his shoulders onto his desk. I've just had such a Buffy moment. He froze. Oh, hello, Richard. Oh, Simon, good morning. We're going to Shanghai, said Eve, and wondered what on earth she was going to tell Nico. Look at this, Simon says, lowering the window of the taxi and flooding it with the warm night. It's extraordinary. And it is. They're approaching the Nanpu Bridge, with vast office blocks to right and left of them, the numberless windows pinpricks of gold against the bruised purple of the sky. And suddenly Eve's tiredness evaporates, and she is light-headed with the novelty of it all. Everything's about money and profit. You can see it in the soaring high-rises, smell it in the diesel fumes, taste it on the night air. The hunger, the high stakes and the huge returns, the unbridled sense that more is more. It's an impression that's confirmed as they cross the bridge. Below them, boats festooned with tiny lights ply the dark expanse of the river. To their right, in floodlight splendor, waits the Bund. How do you feel? Eve asks him. He leans forward, his buff-lined jacket folded on his lap. I'm not sure. Things have got very strange recently. She's out there, Eve murmurs, our Black Rose. We don't know for certain that it was her who killed the hacker. Oh, it was her, all right. Assuming it was, why would she stick around? Can't you guess? No, to be honest with you, I can't. For me, Simon, she's waiting for me. Now, you're actually starting to sound mad. I'm putting it down to the jet lag. You wait. He closes his eyes. 5 minutes later, they are at the hotel. It's only when she's in her room, a functional space whose off-white walls are decorated with a single out-of-date calendar, that she allows herself to think about Nico. The phone call after Edwards left the office was horrible. It would have been easy enough to think up a cover story, but she couldn't bring herself to lie and told Nico simply that she had to go away for a few days. He listened and said, I see, and hung up. He has no idea where she is or when she will be coming home. Eve stares out of the window. There is a road, and beyond it the dark gleam of water, a cluster of houseboats showing dim lights. She loves Nico, and she's hurting him deeply, and this is especially agonizing because for all his wisdom and experience, she can't help thinking of herself as his protector. She's guarding him from the truth about herself, from the side of her that she knows exists, but that he chooses not to acknowledge. The side of her that is utterly absorbed by the woman she's hunting, and the dark, refracted world in which she exists. They're staying at the Seabird Hotel on Jutsu Creek, says Konstantin. They got in last night. Villanelle nods. The two of them are sitting in the 10th floor apartment in the French concession. On the table between them is a bottle of Tibet Glacier mineral water, 2 glasses, and a packet of Cosmos cigarettes. Which means that they're not here officially, Konstantin continues. The Seabird is dirt cheap by Shanghai standards. Villanelle stares out the pale glare of the sky. So why do you think they've come? We know why they have come. The Polastri woman was asking questions in London after Catherine's death. As I told you at the time, if she's here, it's because she's made the right connections. Which means that she's smart, or lucky, and that I need to get a close look at her. No, that would be reckless. I'm pretty sure Polastri's got no real clue what's going on, but that doesn't mean that she's not dangerous. Leave her up to me and go back to Paris. We need to win this operation up. The hack is dead and you need to disappear. I can't do that. His expression hardens. This is not how I want things to go between us, Villanelle. I don't want to have to negotiate every decision. I know you don't. You want me to be your killer doll. Wind me up, point at me at the target, bang bang, and back in my box. She looks him in the eye. Sorry, but that's not how I function these days. I see. So how do you function exactly? Like a thinking, feeling human being. He looks away. Please, Villanelle, don't talk to me about feelings. You're better than that. We are better than that. Are we? Yes. We see the world for what it is. A place where there's not only one law, survival. You survive very comfortably, do you not? Maybe. And why is that? Because give or take a couple of reckless incidents, you've obeyed the rules. What did I tell you in London? She looks away irritably. That I'm never completely safe, and that I should never fully trust anyone. Exactly.
Remember that and you're fine. Forget it and you're fucked.
He reaches for the cigarettes.
Forget it and we're all fucked.
Frowning, Villanelle walks to the plate glass door to the balcony and pulls it open. Humid air fills the room.
Worried about your health?
Konstantin asks, lighting a Cosmos.
I'd have thought a bullet in the back of the head was a more pressing concern.
She looks at him. The acrid tobacco smell reminds her of their earliest days together. In Russia, he must have smoked at least a packet a day. So who's going to shoot me? Eve Polastri? I don't think so.
Trust me, Villanelle. Her people will kill you without a second thought. One word from Polastri to Edwards, and M16 will send an E-Squadron action team. Which is why you have to get out now. Shanghai's a big place if you're Chinese, but it's a very small town if you're not. You could run into her anywhere.
I won't, don't worry. But I do have a way of getting to her, and perhaps of finding out what she knows.
Really?
He exhales cigarette smoke, which drifts away on the warm breeze.
Would you kindly tell me how?
She does so, and for a long time he's silent.
It's too dangerous, he says eventually. Too many variables. We could end up attracting exactly the wrong kind of attention.
You once told me that that kind of operation was a specialty of yours. She looks at him speculatively. Fear, sex, and money, you said. The three great persuaders.
It's too dangerous, he repeats.
She looks away. We might never get this chance again. We can't afford not to take it. He stands up, walks out onto the balcony, finishes a cigarette, taking his time, and flicks the end out into the space.
If we do it, he says, you stay out of sight. I make the play. Agreed?
She grins, her expression fierce.